Welcome back to Domestic Dad, Cleaning Up the Mess. This week, I got to talk with Joey Rains. Joey and I met not too long ago, but we met because of this podcast, which makes this interview even more compelling. Joey reached out to me on Facebook, and he was like, hey, man, can we just get together and chat? And me, I'm like, absolutely. Have you guys ever met an instant friend before? Because with Joey, it was like I had known him my entire life, which was crazy because our stories paralleled each other's so much. Within the first 5 minutes of that conversation, it was like there was a very strong mutual respect and friendship developing. Joey struggled with alcohol, and he's been sober for about 2 years. And while I'm doing this, he's actually sponsoring in AA. This is a good one. So grab a mop because this week we're cleaning up the mess. Has life gotten off track? Are you looking for some inspiration to be a better dad? People say all the time, I'd die for my kids. Okay. But would you live for them? Actually live? Get yourself healthy? Make better choices? Eliminate distractions? Would you lead them more intentionally? Would you get sober? Take better care of yourself, physically and mentally. You'd only have to die once. Your kids don't need you to die for them. They need you to live. Have you thought about getting sober, but you just didn't know where to start? If so, welcome to the Domestic Dad Podcast, your go-to destination for candid discussions on journeys into sobriety, parenting, and personal growth. I'm Nick Barnett, founder of the Domestic Dad Project. I've been a dad since I was 18 years old. I'm also a trauma survivor, an alcoholic, divorced, happily remarried, hardworking, humbled by life, domestic dad. On this podcast, you'll find interviews with people who have walked that path, including myself, coaches, mentors, and pastors who can help guide you on your journey. You're going to need resources and inspiration. You can find that here. This is the community for you to lean into so you can start living life as a domestic dad. So let's grab a mop and start cleaning up the mess. Oh, Joey Rains.
What's up, Nick?
Welcome to the Domestic Dad Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, brother.
Yeah, man.
I'm excited.
Dude, this is I love talking with people who have similar journeys to mine. And I think you and I have a very similar story. I think.
I would agree with that. Yeah, just based on how much we've talked to date, I would say our stories are very similar.
There's parallels there.
Yeah, maybe
right?
not the exact same, but
yeah,
very lot of similarities for sure.
Yeah, I would like to start this one with the same way that I start all of them, which was, what was childhood like for you?
Yeah. So childhood was a very interesting time. I mean, we had a lot of fun growing up. So I have two younger siblings. I have a younger brother who's 5 years younger than me, and a younger sister who's 10 years younger than me. So quite an age gap between us. We primarily lived with my mom. And so we can just kind of start at the beginning, I suppose. Growing up, my mom and dad were married. We lived in a small house on the west side of town. They were divorced by the time I was 5. So shortly after my little brother was born, my dad moved to Woodward, which is about 10 miles away. So we would spend, a couple nights a week with him and every other weekend, kind of a standard arrangement as far as divorces go. So we'd be, spending time there on the weekends and then, doing our normal day-to-day stuff with mom. We grew up, we went to Catholic school, went to St. Pat's Catholic School in Perry, from kindergarten through 8th grade. It was always kind of funny because we started out in kindergarten with like 25 kids. And then by the end of it, there was 8 boys left. That was it in 8th grade. So, by that point, we had already had other social interactions with the public school kids and playing sports with them and stuff. But it was just kind of comical to sit up there from 25 down to 8. Everybody had left and gone to the public school already,
Yeah.
But we stuck it out.
Did you guys have like mass on Fridays?
Oh yeah. Mass on Fridays. Yeah. And lots of serving and reading and things like that. depending on, I think it was by the class maybe who was in charge of mass
Yep.
weekly. I don't exactly remember how that went, but
nostalgia.
yeah, then we'd all have those jobs, you know. It's like, well, who's going to serve and who's going to read, and, you know, who gets to just take up the gifts, you know, like who gets the easy jobs, you know. But I played a lot of sports, you know, growing up. You know, most of my friends were all sports guys. We played a lot of backyard football, backyard basketball, that kind of thing. And, you know, eventually got into wrestling by the time I was about 8. And so that kind of started to take a little more shape and kind of push me in a different direction. Being the shortest, slowest, non-jumping guy wasn't very advantageous in basketball or football. So, you know, I got started to really enjoy wrestling and kind of follow my older cousin's footsteps that way. So that was fun. You know, my brother and I have become very close over the years, and, you know, always just had a really good relationship between us, like kind of stuck together all the time. And same with my sister, even though there's a large age gap. So, you know, our life was a lot of fun. My mom worked really hard to provide us all the things that she thought we deserved and needed. You know, we got to play golf, and we got to do a lot of things that a lot of other kids didn't get to do, you know. And so I would say that although there were some struggles, childhood was pretty fun. You know, it was pretty fun up till, you know, get into high school and had to start to grow up a little bit. But in general, my childhood was pretty fun.
Sounds like you had a rider in your brother too.
Oh,
know,
yeah.
Like somebody that you can lean into.
Oh, yeah. My brothers, you know, we just get closer and closer every year, you know, as we start to kind of unpack each other's stuff. He's kind of helped me lean into the journey of getting better, you know. And so I owe that to him. You know, at first I thought it was a little strange, you know, and I was a little resistant to it, but, you know, as I've leaned into it, it's been a really good thing. And it's been a fun thing for him and I to share, you know. We spend a lot of time talking on the phone and checking in with each other, make sure the other one's good, you know.
What were your parents like when you were growing up?
Yeah. So my mom was just you know, never sits down, you know, working machine, you know. She's always doing something, you know, cleaning the house, you know, mowing the yard, whatever needed to be done. You know, she kind of did most of that stuff. When I was about 8, she was remarried to my sister's dad. And so Steve, my stepdad, is a wonderful guy. He was around from the time I was about 8, and I think they split up maybe around when I was 14 or so. So that's kind of where the, you know, almost growing up a little quicker, kind of taking on some of those responsibilities pretty young is kind of where that kind of started, I would say.
Yeah.
But in general, you know, I was always able to do all the things that I wanted to do, you know.
You felt empowered by your mom?
Yeah. My mom was you know, she drove us, you know. That was, you know, nothing but your best effort. You know what I mean? That's how she was. You know, she never forced us to do anything. Like, it wasn't like, you have to do this, you have to wrestle, or you have to do that. But she expected your best effort.
If you were going to do it, you were going to do it all the way.
And at school, nothing but perfection. You know, that was, you know, I didn't get my first B until I was like 16.
Dang.
You know? Yeah. And it was in an American Lit class. It was actually really tough, but I got scolded at 16 for it, you know.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun, and, you know, ultimately taught me how to work and grind. You know, that's the grit and the grind. It comes from my mom. She never really quit moving forward. You know.
Yeah, same, dude. Yeah. I think my mother was the same way. She was just like, she was relentless in what her expectations of us were going to be. You know. So we kind of talked about school a little bit. Anything significant in school that happened when you were a kid?
I would say nothing. You know, I was kind of I try to be friends with everybody, kind of still how I do now, you know, running a lot of different circles, you know, and find a lot of joy with a lot of different types of people. So, you know, I was part of a lot of different groups, but ultimately, you know, school was fun. It was pretty easy for me. You know, I never really got picked on or anything like that. I mean, besides the little, you know, we're going to shove you in a locker kind of stuff, you know, because I was a small kid, but nothing, you know, that was just kind of how it was. So I almost was like, it would have been weird if I didn't get picked on for it, you know?
It was fun.
Yeah, it was in fun.
Yeah,
it was
in
always
fun.
in fun.
It wasn't like malicious.
No, definitely not malicious.
Yeah.
It's just good old standard picking on each other.
Yeah. All right. So like when you got older and started working, what was life like then?
So,
not that I want to skip over anything there, but like
yeah. So as I was getting into, I think things started to really shift for me and start to really think about what's next when I was probably 15, 16, started to think about what I want to do when I grew up. And I kind of ultimately ended up kind of where I thought I would, to be honest. It's been a plan that way, but I would say, things started to change a little bit when I was 16. I started to get a little more freedom, had a vehicle, was able to go do some more things, and, ultimately started to party a little bit and things like that, not a lot, but in the off seasons of sports when I was kind of a rule follower. So I was a little scared to get in trouble, but still wanted to participate. And so, started to do that a little in high school, but really started to pour the cobs to the booze in college, Yeah. And so it was just kind of a weird transition, I guess. Knowing full well that my drinking was a little different, than everybody else's.
Yeah.
Where I could never put the brakes on it. It's like, well, it's time to be done for the night. And I wasn't ever ready to be done drinking, so there was some concern already early. I think with some family history of alcoholism and things like that it,
Were you aware of that?
I was aware of the family history and, watching, both of my parents struggle a little bit with their their relationship with alcohol, I suppose.
Yeah.
And so I became aware quick that I needed to probably guard against that. Mm. But ultimately, it never stopped me from leaning into it 100%, like in the back of my mind, I'm going, yeah, it's probably not the best idea, but I can get away with it. I'm in college. I can pass it off as partying, that's ultimately what I tried to do for a really long time.
I can remember specifically a time in my life where I don't know, I had to be 15 or 16 years old, and my parents like went out of town on vacation or something like that. And me and my buddies, like we had a video camera, and I was like, my parents are gone. Let's have a party. Right.
Yeah.
So we had a party. We got a bottle of tequila, and we were I was taking shots of tequila. There was like the tall tequila glasses or the tequila shot glasses where it was like different levels, and we'd fill it all the way up and we'd drink it. And I can think back and I'm like, man, that was bad.
Yeah.
If you think about it, at 15, 16 years old, you're taking quadruple or 5x shots of tequila and putting it down and not throwing up.
Exactly. That's,
my parents came back that next day and they were like, hey, so the neighbors were like, there was people on the roof last night. What? Like what?
What's going on here?
I didn't know it at the time, but like that was the beginning of a drinking problem. You know what I mean?
Right,
like those are like little things that just happen when you're a kid. And I was like, oh man. So there's inciting incidents like that for me.
For sure. It's like one of my favorite adages that I've been told over the years is get in trouble every time I drink, but every time I get in trouble, I'm drinking, And so it was just one of those things that it's a ticking time bomb. I think for guys like us that, don't have an off switch.
Yeah. My dad once described it to me best. He was like, when I drink, I don't drink to get, I don't drink to get drunk. I drink to finish the bottle. You know what I mean? Like when you pick it, it's like, okay, we're going to finish this.
Yeah.
So there's something to that.
Yeah. And I think the early stages that, I'm able to look at from the outside later, I think that no matter what reason I was giving for why I was drinking, I was trying to escape reality for a while,
Yeah.
That was really what I was doing, and that's really what ultimately to me, I think was when it became a problem, is when you're using it to, escape reality, and I remember being, kind of back to right after college and working, I kind of just felt like I deserved that time away from reality, like I'm work hard every day. And, if I want to drink on the weekends, I earned it. I deserve it. And, it's just a weird attitude. And looking back, I can't even believe that was my attitude, but it was, I felt like it was deserved, that I could, go drink and, have people help clean up my messes and, get me home safe and things like that. Cause, at some point drinking wasn't fun anymore, and it was just sloppy, I guess.
Yeah. So to that, sloppiness, right? What were you like when you drink?
So, I mean, I think as I examine my journey with booze, I mean, there's obviously certain times where it was worse and certain times where it was better, there was a couple times I tried to quit on my own, more just to tell myself that I could quit at any time kind of thing.
Yep. Been there. Did that.
Obviously not true. Don't try that at home. But it's one of those things that as I look back, I think the worst of it was, as I started to get into like hard liquor when I was like 20, I started to really drink vodka. And, I was never really mean or problematic. I would just get sloppy, because I would drink, double vodka sodas, and I would drink them, faster than I could drink a beer, and with
because you were drinking it to finish it
with no off switch whatsoever. So, you're just setting yourself up for failure, time and time again, And so, then there was the rules, right? So I don't drink vodka anymore, right? I'm not going to drink vodka anymore because that makes me, dumb and sloppy. Well, it'll all get you that way eventually, you know. And so, I think it was like a journey of wishing that somehow I would be able to drink normally. I thought that sometime maybe a switch would click and where I could, go drink 6 beers and stop, but it just wasn't reality. And as I started to understand it a little bit more, in that early 20s phase with the vodka, that's when I started to really know that I have a problem. I wasn't outwardly telling anybody that. I didn't want to admit to that yet. I wanted to pass it off as college partying and having fun, but I knew that I was depending on it for, helping curb my anxiety, initially, and things like that. And, just to calm me down. And then eventually, you drink enough that you kind of do escape reality, for those of us that know what that's like. It's just a weird thing, but ultimately by the time I was about 20, I was like, you're on borrowed time with this drinking thing, pal,
At 20.
Yeah. I was aware, pretty early that it was going to be a problem, and it already was.
How old were you when you stopped drinking?
33. Okay. So 13 more years of just, trying to do it and trying to justify why I was still doing it.
Yeah.
And, I remember, I would get defensive anytime somebody wanted to like talk about how bad it was, and I just wouldn't want to hear it. And,
what do you mean I can't hang out with my best friend anymore?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, nobody ever put the ultimatum on me that you have to stop, really. But as I've discovered, I think until you decide to stop, there's no stopping, really. I mean, you got to do it for yourself. And so it took me a long time to get to that point, I think. Looking back, obviously, I wish I would have got to that point a lot sooner. Especially with, like I said, with the awareness being young enough to understand that it's a problem. It's going to be a problem. But continuing to do it anyway.
Tell me about a time that you look back on with the most regret.
I can pick one, where I was pretty upset with myself. Actually, it was my wedding. That was That was a time where I chose to go ahead and get totally wasted. And it was in such poor form, you know. It's really the one time that Kelly, my ex, had asked me to keep it under control, you know?
Yeah.
And she's like, can you just keep it together today? You know? And I was like, yeah, no problem, you know? And so, you know, leading up to the day, you know, I had some buddies that were there. We were getting ready in the church, that kind of thing. And wasn't a lot of drinking going on because it was pretty taboo. So it was pretty under wraps at that point.
Yeah.
But I wasn't drinking until afterwards. And so I thought I was doing great, you know, got through the actual wedding. We're on the party bus. And then I start to cut it loose a little bit. And, you know, ultimately,
beer or
I don't know, probably beer. I'm sure at least it started that way.
Yeah.
But that's not how it ended. And so, you know, we kind of get through the whole speeches and all the stuff. And then I really cut it loose, you know, and I don't even exactly remember what point the switch flipped. I remember doing some tequila shots with a guy I'd done some tequila shots with at a previous wedding. We got married up where she was from. And so I didn't know this guy, but we had done some tequila shots a month prior, or 2 months prior to different weddings.
And he was like, let's run it back.
Let's run it back. Let's do it. And so of course I obliged, you know. You know, I think at that point thinking, you know what, I'm proud of myself for getting through the points that I did. And, you know, ultimately just cut it loose. And, you know, I had to be taken back to the hotel room, you know, before the party was over, you know? So I think as far as like times that I really could have made it a priority to not do that, that was the number one time I think where I was like, you really messed that up.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was an opportunity I had to try to kind of make some things right by not doing it. And, you know, I went ahead and chose to do it anyway. You know?
Yeah.
And, you know, once again, it was like an entitlement thing almost, like where I felt like, okay, my job's done here at this party. Now I can disappear into the abyss, you know?
Oh man, that's when you say entitlement, that's triggers something in me. Like, yeah, that's exactly what it was. I've never been able to put my finger on it, but entitlement is something that as men that we're like, we did our job. Now I can go and black out. Now I can go and anesthetize. Now I can go to this other place.
Right. And
I don't have to be me anymore.
Yeah,
I did my job.
And I think it's weird because, you know, it's such selfish behavior. And I've really never looked at myself as a selfish guy, but looking back, I did a lot of really selfish things, you know? And I think that I wouldn't have acted that same way had I not been drinking, but, you know, ultimately it kind of pulled me into that kind of behavior, you know, where I did whatever I wanted to do, regardless of what anybody else wanted me to do, you know?
Yeah.
Like I said, the entitlement or deserving to, you know, just do whatever you wanted to do and not with no concern of how it affected other people, you know?
We touched on this earlier, but when did you notice or when did you know that you were different in regards to the addiction?
I mean, like I said, I think it was probably in the early 20s, you know, in college, you know, when the people closest to me would give me a hard time about how much of a pain I was to go out with.
Yeah, you're messy.
Well, I need a babysitter, you know? And so ultimately my best friends would, you know, make sure I got home safe and things like that, because I couldn't do it myself. And so, once again, I think outwardly I'd pass it off as partying, but inwardly I knew that I really liked to disappear into that black hole, you know? And so it was a weird relationship with alcohol for a while. And then ultimately, there were times where it was better. I would have classified myself mostly as a binge drinker for most of my career. Not so much in that early 20s. I was drinking almost every day then. But as I got older, it became okay. Well, keep it to the weekends. Let's not do this all the time. And then other times it was daily.
Yeah, it was benders and nightcaps for me.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, I'm going to do a nightcap every night. And that was the catalyst, right? Like, sure. that was the beginning. That was the launching pad. And drinking every night turned into, I don't have any work to do this weekend.
Yeah.
I can totally cut loose.
Sure.
And then it kind of went from there. And this is like COVID times, right? Like when everybody was staying at home, and it was a different world then. And then it was like, man, I could get drunk in the morning, right? A little hair of the dog.
Absolutely.
Get my day started. There was something to that.
I think that we should talk quick about the hair of the dog while we're at it. Right.
Yeah, let's go.
Because I think for me, that's when things became very different, is when I figured out that when I woke up in the morning, hungover, anxious, nervous, scared, not feeling the best, physically, I guess I didn't really ever have horrible hangovers, but once you figure out that a couple beers will fix that, that's a game changer. And it feels like for me, it was like that game changer that I knew that I shouldn't indulge in, Yeah. I was like,
it's taboo.
It shouldn't start doing that, And I ultimately started doing that in college. And I had I have some anxiety and things like that was kind of untreated at the time. Mm-hmm. And so it just became a way for me to manage anxiety in the morning after nights out, and then that's the tipping point, right, where you realize that it's a medicine in a way, and that is a different way to look at it.
Well, that quickly evolves. Drinking to cope with a hangover, or drinking to cope with something that emotionally happened, or drinking to cope, and you don't realize it at the time, was something that was very traumatic to you way back when, that has now taken root and come out in your day-to-day life. When you're drinking to mask those feelings or those emotions, that's when that's when it starts to hurt, And then just to tie back in, when you have to drink to feel normal.
Yeah.
That's when it's hard.
Yeah.
That's when you realize, that's when the mental health stuff really starts to kick in, dude. Yeah. For me, it was.
Anyways. Agreed. Yeah. I think
when I realized I couldn't get off the hamster wheel.
No, there's no getting off of it at some point. And the deeper you're in it at that particular moment in your life, the worse things are. You don't deal with the things that you need to deal with every day because, you get preoccupied by, wishing you could be drinking instead of doing it. And it's just one of those things that you drink to make the problems go away, but they're always there in the morning.
It's such a thief, man. Yeah, it is such a liar and a thief.
Yeah.
Hey, drink me. I'll make your problems go away.
Well, the thing about alcohol, I think that I just, as I look back on it, it's so sneaky. It grabs you before you know it grabbed you. And once you realize it grabbed you, it's too late. Yeah. Then you're already in, and, I thought for a long time that I could, make my relationship with alcohol normal, but it's just not reality for me, and it's not to say everybody, I'm not trying to say everybody can't drink, but I know that I can't. It's just not good for me, and so it's just the way it has to be.
Yeah. What obstacles did addiction create in your life?
Oh, I mean, it created tons of obstacles. I think whether you want to admit it or not, you're constantly trying to tailor your life to being able to do this thing that you like to do, which is drink, So I remember, shortly after college, getting my first job, and I was like, well, I'm going to live really close to the office and to the bar, just so that I could have perfect access and easy access and not have to drive and things like that. And it's just little decisions like that you look back on, you're like, what a crazy way to make a decision on where to live, but you
lived above a bar.
Absolutely. I mean, but that's what you're doing. You're hanging out with people that make it okay. Hanging out with other people that drink like you do is what I did mostly, is surrounded myself with other people that, weren't going to call me out because they were doing the same thing, and all under the mask of we're just out partying, well, that's the truth for some people, but it wasn't the truth for me.
Yeah. Did you ever get sick?
Oh yeah, for sure. Towards the end, I'm going to go down a little bit of a path of how things finally started to come together for me, as far as knowing that I needed to do something. And luckily I've been, around a lot of really supportive people in my life, and had, put some feelers out there, over the years, letting people know that I knew that at some point that I was going to probably need some help too. So when I made that decision, I had a lot of support really quickly, to get through that. But we're just going to take it back to, I think it was 2020. My ex and I had decided to split up, and she had moved with my son. And so now all of a sudden I have free reign any of the days that I don't have my son. And so drinking got a lot more frequent. And it started to be an everyday thing. And so I was kind of aware that I was slipping into it, but not really ready to give up the rebellious part of it. Like, hey, now I'm free. I can do whatever I want. I can finally, the thing is, in the throes of that, you're thinking, oh my God, thank God I can finally do what I want to do. Like, what an insane way to think about the fact that you just lost your family,
Yeah.
But that's kind of the rebellion came out early, and where I was like, hey, I'm not really accountable most of the time to anybody at home, And so it was about 6 months later. I'd been drinking pretty much every day at that point. And I remember waking up. It was a Wednesday morning. It was in probably August-ish must have been 21. And I remember waking up Wednesday morning, ready to go, normal day, 5:30 in the morning. And I look over, and, I looked over, and I started to count the beer bottles I'd left on the counter that night, knowing that I didn't get home till 9:00. I played golf, I think, that night. And so I looked over, and I'm like, geez, Louise, like from 9 till whenever you went to sleep, you drank 15 beer. Like that's crazy. And the craziest part of it is that I felt fine. That was the real reality for me. That's when it hit me. That was like, this is your day-to-day life is, 15 beers on the counter. And I know that I probably had 8 when I was golfing. So let's just put it, let's just call it 23 drinks,
Case.
Yeah, just 23 drinks on a Tuesday night. And I wasn't blacked out. I wasn't, feeling bad. I was ready to go. I was ready to get in the shower and go to work. And that's ultimately when I was like, oh, dude, the walls are closing in quickly. And that time that you've been, anticipating, dreading, maybe even looking forward to, I don't know, is coming, where you're going to have to stop drinking. And so I went along about 6 more months, just doing the same thing, just drinking and knowing that it was time and not being willing. It was kind of like every time I went out drinking, I thought it might be my last time, and eventually that day came. And so I'll tell you a good story about messing something up. Also really important. So this is fast forward to the end of February in 2022. And my brother had invited me to go along to his company Christmas party. And I knew all the people he worked with, liked them all, had partied with them before, was really looking forward to it. So that morning we got up, we went out, we went to the pool hall, we played some pool, just kind of having a dude day. Had some beers at the pool hall, had lunch, went back to his place, opened up a really fancy bottle of wine that he'd brought back from Napa, shared that, and then started to get ready for this big party, and, dressed to the nines, we're both wearing suits and, going out to this really fancy party. And so, the day just started to spiral out of control from there. We started drinking at noon or I started drinking at noon. And I just remember getting to a hotel before the party and, slamming White Claws. I've done my job. I've gotten to the party, right? Now it's time for me to let it go, because I'd been trying to keep it a little under wraps during the day.
Respectfully.
Of my brother, but it didn't last long. The minute that I got to the party, they were serving these fancy cocktails, which I never messed with. I had no business getting involved in that, but, started drinking, $20 cocktails every 3 minutes, and, ultimately just made a really embarrassing scene, for myself and my brother, as his guest at this party. And, that was the last thing that I crashed, that was the last party that I ruined, for other people. And I did drink a couple more times that week. So that was a Saturday night. My brother and I had talked about it. He was really pissed at me. He didn't typically get pissed at me for my escapades,
Did do you want to say what it was that happened, or?
I don't know that anything specific happened. It was just a culmination of just being drunk and sloppy and annoying and not remembering anybody's name. Just being that guy, that didn't care about anything else other than just how drunk I could get as quick as I could get,
Oh man.
Yeah, it's
I know what that feels like.
It's
That's really
such
bad.
a crappy feeling to think about now, but at the time, that's how I thought, And so, I drank a couple more days that week, and my brother and I had talked, and I remember I woke up on Friday morning. I think it would have been the 4th of February. And I texted my buddy and I said, "Hey, dude, I got to stop. Can you help?" And I knew he had a group that he was involved with, and he had gotten sober and gotten a lot of help from these guys. And so, I knew that he was going to be my first call, when the time came. And I texted him on Friday morning. I said, "Hey, dude, we got to talk." I said, "I got to quit." He called me right away. He said, "How can I help?" And so once again, just being lucky, a little bit that I had found that right person years before, and watched him struggle through it, and had even talked through his struggles with him, and tried to help, just because I kind of knew some of what he was going through. And ultimately he introduced me to a guy that helped me a lot, the guy named Chris. And so those two came to my house that Sunday, and I was nervous. I was like, man, I can't believe I'm finally going to quit. Like, life's over, no more fun. But I'm ready to do it anyway. I've had my fun, And so Chris and Brad came over on Sunday afternoon, and Chris walked in, and he was not at all what I expected. This guy was fun. He was outrageous. He laughed a lot. He was enjoying his life, and found out he'd been sober a really long time, and probably had some similar struggles. I think he actually probably quit right around the same point in his life where I was at. And so he asked me a few questions, I remember. And then he looked at Brad and he said, "Well, I think he's one of us." And I was like, yeah, I was afraid of that,
Inclusion.
Yeah. But ultimately, that guy gave me a lot of confidence to kind of change things around, and a lot of support when I needed it early, especially,
Yeah.
He'd call me every day,
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so, you talk about all the bad things, but like how fortunate I was to be in a situation where I was surrounded by people that wanted to help too, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's,
As soon as I could quit fighting myself, you know?
I love that. Here's somebody said this to me recently, and I wrote it down because it was so impactful. They said, recovery is an individual journey that must never be taken alone. And I was like, dude, you're right.
Yeah.
Because you have to do it on your own, but you can't do it by yourself.
No.
Right. So to have people like Chris
Mhm.
in your life that were like, yeah, you're one of us now. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? That's pretty good. You know what I mean? You gotta find that. You gotta have that.
I don't know of any other way. To my knowledge, I mean, I know there are people who can quit drinking, you know, just kind of cold turkey. And I don't know that that's the same thing. I think there's a lot of people that maybe quit drinking, but then weren't able to get the life part of it back, you know? And so that's what I feel like I'm getting back now, is I'm getting back, you know, some real life, you know?
Yeah. So that was the last time that you quit, right? And that was it.
Yeah. I was fortunate enough. You know, my drinking wasn't really bad enough that I needed to go to treatment, thankfully.
Yeah.
You know, I think obviously it was headed that way. I mean, I think if I would have continued for another few months, I don't know what would have happened. You know, I could end up dead. I mean, I was starting to feel physically not very well. You know, I was throwing up every morning, and, you know, you kind of have I always assumed they were kidney pains, you know, in the back of my, you know, you kind of get some weird pains going on, and you're like, well, I didn't get hit there, you know, and there's only one thing that could probably cause this, you know, and whether you want to admit it or not, you know, it's the booze.
Yeah. You know, going to the bathroom is different.
Absolutely.
Everything changes. Your body is in pain in ways that I can't really describe now that I'm away from it. But back then I could have been like, this is acutely where it's at. You know what I mean? Like these are, and like your joints would get achy. You just weren't. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the oil in your body was going bad, you know? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, definitely headed down a weird path. I'm fortunate that I don't think it had any, you know, super long-term effects, but
the body's an incredible thing, man. It can recover, and it can get back to where, you know, you don't feel the effects of it anymore. So, you know, if you catch it early enough.
mm-hmm.
So how many times had you attempted to quit drinking before that?
I don't know that I would have ever said that I gave it a real go. I think, you know, I did it. I tried to do it maybe 3 or 4 times over the course, you know, maybe coupled with an event, you know, get in trouble or something to that nature, you know, where I'd, you know, maybe make it a month without drinking, you know. But, you know, like I said, there's certain points in my life where I was really just a binge drinker anyway. So, you know, going a month without drinking wasn't really, that's not really the issue. It's avoiding the 3-day bender, you know, at that point. So,
yeah,
which eventually just came back. You know?
What were like I don't know if you could say up to 5 best skills that you built in finding your sobriety. I talk a lot about connection with other people. I think that's huge. I talk a lot about community building, camaraderie, and then consistency of meetings and things of that nature. And then just staying on top of doing what you did to get sober. What skills do you think impacted you the most that you had to develop in those moments?
Well, I think one of the first things that I'll talk to is, you know, the ability to deal with, you know, emotions, right? I think that's something that I was never good at, because I would just drink through it until it wasn't bothering me anymore, you know? And so I think that's one thing I tell guys that, you know, maybe haven't been sober for very long, you know, been away from booze for too long, that it's going to change the way your brain works. You know, you might be really sad and cry all of a sudden, you know, and you're just not used to doing that stuff, you know, or you get really happy and cry, you know, and you're like, I think the booze always kind of just kept everything dull, you know, to the point where
synthetic.
There wasn't really highs and lows. I mean, there were highs and lows, but and so I think that's probably one thing that I've gotten a lot better at is having a little confidence to sit with those emotions for a little bit and really let them pass and really process through things, so that they don't hang around or come back up later. So I'd say that's one thing. I mean, I think, attending meetings regularly is certainly a part of my journey. I go every Wednesday. I miss very occasionally, but it's a very important part of my week. It's almost like a reset, I would say. You get in and we can kind of talk what's on your mind, or just having that community within other people that are working through their journey, and just kind of sharing what's going on. And I know that right after that meeting is probably the calmest I'll feel all week, and so that's why I go back.
Well, it gives you, how do I want to say this? It gives you, those meetings bear fruit for your mind later on. And that's what you need in recovery. You need that often.
Mm-hmm.
You need to talk about it often. That's why I do what I do.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's why I try to talk about my recovery and other people's recovery all the time, because I'm always looking for another tool to pick up. You can't stay clean on yesterday's shower, man.
Nope.
Whatever you did yesterday, great. That kept you clean yesterday. What are you going to do today? You got, like, if you don't shower today, you're going to end up stinking at the end of the day.
Right.
You know what I mean? So what are you doing to stay in recovery today?
Right.
So, and people might come to me and they might talk with me, and we may not talk about recovery, but at the same time, like, I'm doing something. People don't know that I'm doing something every day. Like, you have to stay in the maintenance phase of change.
Absolutely.
If you don't, it's likely that you will fail. Somebody once asked me early on in recovery, I think I was 2 or 3 months in.
Mm-hmm.
I was so proud. I was like, dude, 90 days.
Right.
Yeah. He goes, what do you think would be, and I think I've shared this before, but he goes, what do you think would be, what would have to happen in order for you to drink again? And I was like, man, like, something terrible would have to happen to my sons.
Yeah.
Or my wife. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Something tragic. And then I might drink.
Yeah.
He goes, no, dude, no. You stop doing all the things that you've done to get to this point.
Yeah.
That's what will get you to drink. And I was like, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. You get big headed. You forget that you have to practice every day. It's like a major league baseball player, football player, major league athlete. You know what I mean? It's like, they don't stop. Kobe never stopped.
Never.
He didn't. He got up at 3:00 in the morning and he went to work, and he came home and he was a dad, and then he went to work, and throughout the entire day he worked, and you think about that stuff all the time.
Yeah. It's just, it's something that you always have to keep in the forefront of your mind. I think if you get complacent with it, it could be really easy to slip back into it in a hurry. I've had a couple thoughts over, the roughly 2.5 years that it's been since I've drank. I've been pretty lucky that the obsession to drink left me quickly,
Yeah.
And Chris used to say something, that's he always say, think the drink. And I had no clue what he meant by that. But one night I was sitting at home, and, I don't know how long I'd been sober, maybe 6 months or something. And it just kind of occurred to me that, I could drink right now and nobody'd ever know, And so I started to think about it, and I said, okay, yeah, you know what? Maybe I have one tonight, maybe two, and then what's that mean? Pretty soon I just started to think through it, and I'm just like, I just see myself, if I start doing that, I'm just going to end up in the same place that I was. And so I was able to think all the way through it. And I finally was like, hey, it makes sense now. Think the drink. It's like, oh yeah, well, I could have one sneaky drink here and maybe one tomorrow. But why? Because ultimately, what they say is every time you go back, it gets worse, faster.
Yeah, you don't start at the beginning.
Yeah,
you start at the end.
Yeah. And so, I think that scares me enough to know that it's just not worth it. And ultimately the value that it's provided my life, to not have alcohol be a part of it. I don't want to give that up. I have more energy. I'm happier. I'm living life in a way that makes me happy, and, I think I told myself that I was happy before, but I was wrong, And so I don't want to give any of that stuff up. I don't
Hell
want to
no.
give up that energy of being able to go till 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock every night, and wake up feeling great in the morning instead of feeling slow and, groggy,
Yeah.
It's amazing how much that hindered you or hindered me. And I didn't even really recognize it,
Yeah.
So
Okay, so I had quit drinking for like 3 months one time.
Yeah.
And I was pretty proud of myself. And, I'd gone through the beginning stages of haven't had a drink. I was super cocky about it. I was, you know what I mean?
Sure.
I think I shared this with you at one point, but a friend of mine had gotten these new seltzers, and it was the Truly fruit punch. Like it was the punch or the juice, the Truly
Right.
juice. And I was like, I want to have a drink of that. I really want to have a drink of that. And they were drinking them. My wife hadn't quit drinking at that point. You know what I mean? I did not have my accountability partner with me at that point. You know what I mean? I did not have one yet. And I was just like,
more power to your can't do it alone. Right.
Yeah, exactly. and I was like, I'll take one drink of that. I'm going to take a sip. And that I will never forget it, Joey. When I took that, I remember I went like that. And the saliva that came to my mouth when I did that, it was almost like it got wet. My whole mouth got just wet. And I was like, oh, and I swallowed it. And I can remember like the tingling, burning sensation of the alcohol coming down my esophagus and into my belly. And it got warm and I got goosebumps and my hair stood up on my arm. And this is no bullshit, dude. Like this happened.
Yeah, I believe.
And I was like, and I'm like 3 months of sobriety for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was over.
Yeah.
It was over at that point because I took that sip, I could take a drink.
Right.
I'll be fine. I'm not going to get drunk.
Right.
Yeah. But not getting drunk led to getting a buzz the next day because I could have a couple of drinks. You know what I mean? Maybe I'll have a beer, and a beer turned into, maybe I'll have like a 6-pack. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And then a 6-pack turned into a bottle of vodka sitting in the cupboard, to martinis at night, to no longer martinis, to just glasses of vodka with a splash of like pickle juice in them or olive juice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then that turned into 7 very quickly. And then it turned into I'm drunk or I'm hungover the next morning, or I can't sleep at night, to having to drink in the middle of the night again. Absolutely. You know what I mean? And it was just this vicious cycle because you don't start at the beginning of your drinking after you quit.
Right.
You start at the absolute very end of being in the bottom of the pit at rock bottom and needing it just as bad all over again. So when you said, in my head, I thought, I could have a drink and nobody would know, but everything would change.
Absolutely.
So it's such a terrifying feeling. And you know what, man? And we haven't really touched on this much, but the remorse that I had with drinking, and you're a father, so you get it, is how checked out you are on your children, which is another big part of this podcast is, parenting and how we fail our children when we put things before them. And when you drink, as much as you want to say that you're still a dad or that you're still doing it, you're not doing it at the capacity that they need. You're not being the hero to your children that they look up to. You're checked out.
Yeah.
There's something that takes over that you're not the man that they need you to be anymore.
Yeah. I think it's just that your number one priority is booze. It's hard to admit that maybe, but that's your number one mistress is the booze, and so it takes you away from a lot of other things. It takes you away from all the places you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Emotionally. And it honestly puts you, and then to top it off, it puts you in places that are negative. So not only are you not helping, you're also now hurting, Yeah. And because for me, my decision making gets pretty rocky when I'm drinking, and so absolutely not as present as I should be in anything, for sure. Especially with, with Grover, I remember it's like, can't he just play by himself for a while, and having just these crap attitudes about things. And, you get so ashamed of that stuff later on once you realize how wrong you were in that moment. But it kind of takes a long time to even really process, how bad you were to the people around you,
Yeah, it's just regret.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the absolute regret and depression. And all of that stuff leads to this self-deprecating that makes you feel unworthy to be living the life that you've been given.
Right. Yeah. And it's just a life full of fear and anxiety, too, that it's a really tough way to live. I mean, it's a really tough way to live.
Yeah.
And, I think that's another thing to get back to the, what helps. For me, this helps, is being able to share with people that there's a way out, and that, it seems like it's just so ingrained in your life that you cannot remove it, and you can. And, I remember thinking that all my friends are going to just be like, wow, what a loser, and they're not going to want to hang out with me anymore. Well, it turns out they were all pretty supportive, and also very happy that they didn't have to cart me home after the bar every night, And so, I think if you are honest with yourself and you truly have good friends in your corner, your life is going to get way better, because even though you think that this is your identity, is the drunk guy in the group, and that people love you for that, they actually don't love you for that.
No. And to be real about it, what I learned post sobriety is that a lot of people were praying for me to get sober. A lot of people thought, Nick does stupid stuff when he's drunk.
Mm-hmm.
Nick, it's so sad because he had so much potential.
Right.
It's so sad because we love Nick, but we couldn't be around Nick because of his alcohol.
Right.
And that's a hard pill to swallow. Even today, that's a hard pill to swallow. But here's the crazy thing about sobriety. It allows you to let go of all the shame that you've got in your life.
Yeah. You don't have to carry it around,
You can get rid of all the shame in your bucket, and I can own all the things that I've done at this point. And while they're still hard to swallow, and remember that that's what I did. And those are the things that get you all emotional, right?
Absolutely.
That's the triggering stuff that gets you like, oh gosh.
That's the stuff that
I gotta
makes you
stop
cry.
lying I can't lie to myself about this anymore. I can't sedate these things anymore.
Right.
Oh no.
Hey, you just got to sit there and be quiet and think about it.
But processing through that stuff, Joey, is some of the most powerful things that you can do internally in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the best.
Absolutely.
Is getting through it and being able to own it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's shifting your perspective on, basically your whole life, because, I know that I had, convinced myself that I was doing okay even with this problem, and I don't know that was the truth, I was missing out on a lot, and being present in the world was probably the number one thing. Like anytime I was in a situation, I was thinking about how to get out of that situation and what to go do next.
Yeah.
Instead of just being where I was at. And, being where you're at is a really, really good way to live your life.
Yeah.
And, just trying to do your best in the situation that you're in, and not letting everything else affect that right now, and it's really hard to compartmentalize that when you're drinking, because you have so much fear and anxiety that even when you're in the room with somebody, you're not really there, even if you're drinking or not, it's like your brain's just in a weird place.
Yep.
And so like being able to live in the present. It sounds so cliche, and I always thought it was such a silly thing to try to do. But once you do it, it's really powerful, to be able to just truly enjoy what you're doing in the moment.
Yeah.
Every day, even if it's not that exciting, it's just make it exciting,
Yep. What's your biggest accomplishment since getting sober?
I think the biggest accomplishment is being able to be there for other people, and finally feeling like people can depend on me, versus, man, I really wish I could call Joey, but it's 9 and he's going to be drunk and be no help,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's, just knowing that you can be available to be helpful to people at any given time,
Yeah.
and I think having the energy to do so.
Yeah.
So I don't know that there's any one single accomplishment, but it's just a feeling of like life is coming together,
Yeah.
and it's like, it's never going to be complete, but it's a work in progress.
Yeah. What does your day-to-day look like now that you're sober? Yeah. I know you grind.
Yeah,
I know
grind,
you do a lot.
I go to work about 7, get done about 5, and work pretty hard during the day, and then usually there's always something. I'm grinding on golf or grinding, going doing something fun with Grover. So it's like a nonstop. I try to just keep moving all day. Wake up in the morning, get going, go to work. Try to have something to look forward to at the end of the day. Maybe golf, relax. But generally, I'm not going to get home till 9 o'clock at night on a normal day, and ultimately might end up going downstairs and I'm playing pool for an hour or two too. Just because I have so much more energy, and attention to focus and details, that it's like having a superpower to have this much energy, and it's something that I don't ever want to let go of.
Yeah. It's like clarity and focus and all the things that you need to do life well that you've been missing for decades.
Right.
Yeah. What's your favorite part about being a dad?
I think my favorite part about being a dad is watching Grover take shape into who he is, and watching his personality develop. I think one of the coolest things about him is that he has a lot of my brain, which I'm, a bit sad for him, but also he's got a lot of his mom's brain too. So he's kind of a mold of both of us.
Yeah.
And so kind of seeing how that's manifesting in his little mind is really fun. Watching him learn how to read, watching him learn how to, do math problems very quickly. He's 6 and he can rattle off a lot of numbers that most adults can't. So I think watching his brain work and trying to understand what he's processing when his little wheels are turning, I think that's the most fun thing.
It's fascinating.
Trying to figure out. Unfortunately, I think he's got a little bit of the people pleaser mentality in him. Mm-hmm. So trying to pick up when he's doing that, and seeing some of my own, trauma responses come out
isn't it hard recognizing we can go down a whole rabbit hole here, but seeing my faults in my children and then holding back and not like trying to totally course correct them in the moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But to embrace what it is that they're dealing with and try to like coach them how to handle it better, without like completely becoming the advice dad in the moment.
Yeah. I mean, watching them make mistakes is difficult, but I think it's one of those things that's necessary. And I like the coaching aspect of it, like you're talking, where you're not going to flat out just correct the behavior, but let's talk about why it's happening,
Yeah.
And, also try to let him know that like he doesn't have to do things just because he knows I want to do them.
Yes.
But he's trying to make me happy, right? And so you're like, I really don't like. I know that you think you're doing a good thing by trying to do what you think I want to do, but I don't want you to say, "Hey, Dad, this is what I want to do," because it's what I want to do. I want to know what you want to do, and then I'll tell you what I want to do, and we'll talk about it. But he's kind of got some of that in him. It's just like, well, this is what I know you want to do, so let's go do that.
Yeah,
because he just wants to hang out. So it's just it's powerful. It's powerful stuff. Watching him grow and change.
Yeah. Being a sober dad is way better than being an alcoholic dad. I'll tell you that.
I don't think I would have noticed any of the things I'm noticing.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have been aware enough to notice some of that behavior, and, ultimately just trying to make him a happy kid,
Yeah. I'm so grateful for all my children. But I'm also so grateful for the opportunity to be a father in sobriety. You know what I mean? I think
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it just goes back to that like complacent life that you were living where you were in the room, but you weren't really in the room, and now you're actually there, and you're actually paying attention.
You get to enjoy it at a different level.
Well, and you're putting other people's needs in front of your own, for the first time, like I said, the hard lesson for me is, always thinking I was not very selfish, but I look back on the behavior, it was pretty selfish, and so I don't think living that kind of life is all that rewarding anyway,
Yeah.
And so I think the rewards come from doing your best and helping out other people that need it.
Yeah. What advice would you give the next person who's going to get sober or is thinking about it?
Do it now. Don't wait.
Yeah.
I would say, find somebody that knows a little bit about it and just run with it. I mean, there's no perfect path. I was pretty lucky, like I said, with Chris. He'd been sober a long time and had helped a lot of people get sober, so he knew. But just start. Find somebody who can help you, and there's a lot of resources out there and a lot of people that want to help. Ultimately,
yourself being one of them.
Absolutely. And that for me, I feel like I've been given a gift at a different kind of life than I was living. And, it's available for anybody, to, kind of change the course of their life in a way that's better. And, for people that got problems with alcohol, until you cure that one thing, it gets in the way of a lot. Yeah. And so I would say, don't be scared, and don't worry about it. Just start doing it and find some people that are like-minded and that you can share openly with and tell them what's really going on, and just start to do it.
Yeah. So you do AA.
Yeah. Yep.
So there's many different pathways to sobriety in my opinion. Absolutely. I know some people think that there's one way, or maybe, that's the one way and that's the only way. And I think all these different pathways into sobriety, and I've done every one of them. I've gone to AA, I've done an IOP, I've done rehab, I've done peers. Yep. You know what I mean? I've done all of it. And I think that they're all of them are very similar. But AA is unique in the fact that it has a step program, correct? Yeah. And I don't know all the things about AA, so you'll have to kind of coach me on this a little bit. But you're also an AA sponsor.
Correct.
Correct? Yeah. So you do sponsor men.
Yeah, yeah.
And other people. So tell me a little bit about that. How has that been for you? Is it?
It's a journey. Yeah. It's a journey, I think it's one of the things that we know as alcoholics is that we can't do it on our own, and nobody else can do it on their own. So, helping other people with it also helps you, so as much as, you feel like it's a responsibility, to be somebody's sponsor, which it is, you're helping yourself too. And, the other thing that's really challenging is that people aren't always going to do what you hope they'll do. and so you got to learn when to let go a little bit. And, I think that's been the most challenging part of it, is trying to learn that balance. I wish Chris was still here to teach me how to be a better sponsor, but he's not. And so I just jump in and try to be helpful, and so I think that's kind of my nature, and it's what I really love to do, is to, you watch somebody's demeanor change, and watch things start to go the right direction. And when they become aware that things are going better, then they realize that maybe it's because they've removed this thing from their life.
Yeah.
And so most people don't really set out to get sober with even the right mindset, I would say. I mean, I think a couple times I did it, I was trying to do it for other people, because I was embarrassed, or, whatever the case may be. But ultimately you got to do it for yourself. And you got a lot of help. There's a lot of help for it, but it's an uncharted water, I guess, for me. I'm new to it. I've only been doing it for maybe like a year.
Yeah.
But I love it. I mean, I do love it. It's got its challenges for sure, but there's nothing better than watching somebody figure it out.
Yeah. Yep. Dude, helping people is one of the greatest privileges I think that we get. And as dads, I think it fills us up even extra a little bit, because we're like, yeah, we actually get to use some of the stuff that we've learned in being a father to help. It all applies.
Absolutely.
When you're helping people, so.
Yeah. And I think, ultimately, helping other people is how how I gain energy, for sure. It takes energy too, but the way it makes you feel when it's going good is worth every bit of it, and ultimately it helps keep me on the right path too. So,
yeah. Well, I will say, from the first time I met you, you've energized me. You give me, you fire me up. So.
You fire me up too. That's what makes it. It's like we're so similar that it's kind of scary.
Yeah.
But I like it, and it's fun. You know. So.
Hey man, you can't get enough accountability partners.
No, absolutely not.
So.
And especially people that will call you out when you need called out.
Yeah.
That's what you need.
Yep. Okay. I have like two more questions. If you could go back, what would you tell sober you on day one of sobriety?
I think I would just tell myself that it's a path where you have no idea where you're headed at first, and to be a little more open-minded about taking advice from people that have a little more time,
Yeah.
And I think I was a sponge to a degree, but I think there were parts of it that I'm like, I don't know, I don't know if that's for me. And I think it's just just be a little more open-minded, I think. And also just trust that things are going to get better. I think that's one thing that we tell people when they're just kind of getting sober, is like, things are going to just start to get better. And it's really, there's nothing tangible that you could give them. It's not like, hey, if you quit drinking, in a year, you're going to be rich or something like that. There's no measurable thing, but
you'll be a lot richer than you were when you were drinking. I'll tell you that.
That's for sure. But it's more about how you feel every day, and it's just like, it makes you more productive. It makes you more accountable. It makes you all the things that you need to be productive. And so just trust that even if you don't understand some certain things yet, that it's going to come,
Yeah. What's the biggest mess you've cleaned up?
I mean, I think there's a lot of relationship messes. I think that, my relationship with my son is way better. My relationship with my ex is way better. My relationship with my brother continues to get better. My sister, it all continues to get better, with my mom, my dad, everybody around me, really. I think just being there and being present and being less selfish, is just going to naturally make those things better.
Yeah. Right on.
And so, I would say that's probably the biggest mess. It's a mess that I didn't even know I had, I think. I thought everybody was just kind of okay with what I was doing. They weren't.
Turns out they're
they
not.
are not. Turns out they're a lot happier that I don't drink anymore.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just the building of community and the strength of the relationships that I've built within, the AA community as well. You have people that you depend on every day, that help get you through things when things aren't going good, and I think that's the one misunderstanding I think that I probably had on day one was that, yeah, things are going to get easier, but that doesn't mean there's not going to be issues, and problems. Right.
Yeah.
And so then learning how to deal with those things sober is very different. And also just your ability to actually clean up the mess is you actually have a little more ability to fix it, because you have the energy and, the accountability versus the defensive attitude about it,
Yep. Right on, man. Well, any words of wisdom you want to leave us with?
I appreciate you having me on here, Nick. I appreciate the relationship that we've built and look forward to continuing that. I think that the last thing I can say, and the whole point of me coming here is just to let people know that there are resources out there, and let you know that things will get better, things can get better. And so even if you feel like you're in the deepest hole with it, there's a way to dig out of it,
Yeah. Amen.
Absolutely.
Right on. Thanks, Joey.
Thanks, brother.
All right. If you're hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode. And for that, I want to thank you with all my heart. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps us out. If you have questions about getting sober, parenting, or personal growth, email Nick at domesticdadproject.com with any questions about cleaning up the messes you've made. And if your question is discussion worthy, we'll feature it in an upcoming episode. Don't forget, you can watch any of these videos uncut and unedited, filmed in my studio from our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search for Domestic Dad Project. Also, please follow us on Facebook or share this episode on your social media. You can also join our community by grabbing some merch. It means the world to me to know that this podcast is making a difference in someone's life. And if this episode inspired you to get sober or simply become a better version of yourself, you can claim your free 60-minute coaching session by visiting www.domesticdadproject.com. Let's continue supporting each other to break the stigma around dads reaching out for help, to get our lives on track while navigating the obstacles of fatherhood. Until next time, keep cleaning up the mess.